Okay, so I have a session here. I will tell you, I'm not going to go through it like I would if I was doing a formal session. Like again, sometimes I do a group with just players, sometimes mostly coaches, so it's kind of going to be a mix. I want to make sure as we're going through, if you have questions, please feel comfortable shouting it out, asking questions. I do this full time. I talk about college and rugby and recruiting and admissions all the time. So it makes a ton of sense to me. If it doesn't make sense to you, please don't feel silly about like, what was that thing you just said? Can you go over it more? We've got time, so I want to make sure you guys feel comfortable with that. So with that in mind, my name is Karen, so I'm the owner and founder of the Runner's Edge. So this is what I do all the time. I help high school families and students go through the process of college search, college admissions, college recruitment, through the lens of rugby. So really focusing on rugby and how that can help. A little bit of my background here. So I've been a part of the rugby community for a really long time. First as a player, then as a referee, and then now more on the kind of education side of things as a World Rugby educator and trainer. That is my family there. We're a rugby family. My husband's also a former rugby player. That's our daughter. She's 6 now. She will probably be a rugby player at some point, so we don't quite know yet. And I'm based in Colorado, but I do work with students worldwide. So I have families I work with in Colorado, California, overseas, everywhere. So rugby is a worldwide sport, which is a really kind of exciting thing. We're going to talk more about domestic college rugby and recruitment, but I also don't want you to not think about it. I'd say in the last 2 to 3 years, more students that are willing to go to universities overseas, go to Canada, go to Australia, go to New Zealand to study and play rugby. So there is more opportunities out there than what I'll even talk about today, okay? This is just a little bit more about what we do, although the focus is really working with high school students and athletes. However, if you do coach a team, if it's something where you want to do it, I do this all the time, we can always schedule a webinar for just your team if you feel like that was something that's of interest to you, or like Rugby Ohio, or Rugby Michigan. We want to do something just for their state, so that's something we can always talk about. Okay? These are some things that we'll generally cover with families and students, but again, we don't need to stick to this agenda completely, kind of what the landscape looks like, what is scholarship, and what does that process really look like, and then steps for the players, okay? And the steps for the players will vary depending on if you're a freshman, if you're a junior, sophomore, and senior, right? So some of those things are helpful. And with the college coaches that are, not college, high school coaches that are here, I think there's some things that you can do to help your students achieve some of these things, okay? Okay, the question and answer. Okay, so I put up this slide, but I also tell students and coaches, this is what it looks like right now, but probably forget about the slide because it's probably gonna change, okay? So this slide changed a lot from what it used to be, but the main thing that I try to tell students is to know that the way that collegiate rugby is organized is not like how football or volleyball or anything is organized, right? It's really about what group, their affiliate group, their kind of compliance group that they're kind of underneath, but they can change, right? A team that decided to be with NCR this year can potentially change to not be NCR next year. So there's a lot more freedom. So with that, for you as a high school student or as a coach, you might find that this is a little bit confusing because it might be different. By the way, if after the session you can email me and I'll send you this this PowerPoint, so you don't have to like try to remember everything. Now this slide, thanks to Mr. Alex Goff back there and also Jackie Finland, who, if you don't follow their news media outlets, they're the only ones out there. They're the best source for high school and college rugby news. We had a really hard time finding out the actual numbers of teams that were out there. So when I contacted USA Rugby, they literally were like, we actually don't know. We have some rough ideas, and Alex was kind enough to share what he knew. And this spreadsheet used to only actually have like 4 rows, and obviously, as you can see, there's quite a bit of change, and with the asterisks there, a lot of it is, and Alex, you can probably expand on this, but there are teams that are listed, but like inactive, don't know if they're coming back because of COVID, things like that. Is that right?
Right, yeah, some started in a development situation, playing sevens, but then, yeah, COVID, they shut down, haven't seen them play in a year and a half or so,
Right.
but they say they have a team, or NCR says they did, so.
Right.
That's why it's the approximation.
Right. So the big thing I want for students and the coaches that are here, when you're talking to families and you're getting super excited, you're like, why should you play, rugby, or why should you play high school rugby? I really want you to think about the numbers here at the bottom. So if you're coaching high school boys, you can let them know, look, there's about 400 programs. If they want to go play college sports, intercollegiate college sports, like playing against other schools, not just intramurals, right, on your own campus, 400 options for you. And as a female player, you can go on to about 380 programs, so just options. Right? I want them to think about if they want to go to play college rugby, you can, 100%. I get that question all the time. Do you think I could play college rugby? I'm like, yeah, you can, because look at all these different ways you can do it. But obviously there's differences. If you're going to play NCAA women's rugby, it's different than playing women's small college. Right? But there is a space for you, and that's what we always talk about with rugby. Right? Like, you can be any shape you are. You can be slow, you can be fast, you can be tall, you can be short, and there's a place for you. Same with college rugby. There's a place for them. Encourage that. Talk with that. I often get, actually this ties a little bit to Alex's session earlier. There's all this money and time and effort put into growing youth rugby, right, through middle school and high school, and then there's a huge drop from high school to college. And then there's, again, actually another drop from college to club, right? So part of that is just what I've come to see when I talk to families. Students not really sure what to expect, and so they actually don't, I've seen them go on to college, and I'm like, why are you playing? They're like, oh, I don't know, I didn't know where to go, and then by that time I was already past, they kind of felt like that season of their life had already passed, right? But they can play club at any time, or they can play senior. So please encourage your students. Hey, there's going to be a place for you. You may not be the best player, but you might be the best player on a small college team. You could be the guy that they're looking for, the gal that they're looking for. Any questions about this? I know it's a lot of information, but any questions about this? Okay, so a lot of this beginning of the session is just setting the groundwork, making sure you guys understand the landscape, because it gets a little bit confusing, and families especially who have had some pretty savvy families that have maybe had an older son or daughter go on recruiting with soccer or volleyball. Their process is much more structured, and rugby is not. So I want to explain why it's not as structured. Part of it is because college rugby, I think, is still figuring itself out, right? It's still relatively new compared to other sports. So that's why it seems a little bit confusing. Here's some examples of what those college teams would be. And again, this is all kind of out there. And if you're not sure, when you're researching your colleges, you can always look at that school's website, talk to those colleges, what division are you in? Because chances are likely too, they could be again in Division II this year. They can choose to move up the next year, or they can move down, or whatever the case may be. Okay, so don't get too focused on divisions, because it doesn't really mean anything right now. If that makes sense. And I get students all the time that are like, I'm a D1 player coach, I'm going D1. I'm like, okay. There's some pretty weak D1 teams, D1A teams that probably should be D1AA, or probably should be D2, and vice versa. But just because of their region and who they play against normally, because of finances, they're going to choose certain divisions. Okay, so again, just don't get too focused on that part. Okay, any questions about this? Kind of makes sense for now. Okay. For the women, if you do coach young women, obviously the growth of NCAA women's rugby is huge. It's a big thing that I would say probably less than 3 or 4 years ago, the families that were coming to me, 75% of them were the players were boys. Right? A very small percentage are female players. Right now it's about 50-50. I get more female players now than I have male players, which is exciting. It's because the families have started seeing this is a pretty big opportunity. Right? The pool of female players is fairly small right now. It's not like soccer, right, where everyone's been playing soccer since they were 3. So if you start picking that up in high school, you're probably not going to get recruited for soccer or volleyball. But for rugby, you can. Right? The percentage of students that go on to a collegiate sport is so small, and yet there's a huge opportunity for especially the young women to go on and play at a NCAA division. Okay? Any questions about this, especially the players in the room? Just know that if you're going to go with any of the NCAA programs, you do have to follow their recruiting schedule. Do you coach girls at all? No? Okay. Boys do not have to follow NCAA, and none of the men's teams follow NCAA, but on the women's side they do. So you do have to follow all the same, they have to go through the NCAA Eligibility Center, they have to follow the timeline and the calendars of when they can contact. So for example, Sacred Heart, Coach Reed is here. She is not allowed to be in recruiting row because she's not allowed to talk to freshmen or sophomores. So the chances of her being in there and having a freshman and sophomore talk to her would put her out of compliance. So that's why she's not allowed in there, not because she doesn't want to meet players, she can only talk to juniors and seniors. So NCAA does have a lot more restrictions than non-NCAA, right? So like Lauren Miller, who's in here with Aquinas, they're varsity but not NCAA, she can talk to a freshman, right? Because she doesn't have the same rules that other programs have to follow. Okay, so you do have to, if you know that they're NCAA, there is a reason whether or not they're responding. It may not be that they're not interested in you, it's because they have different rules they have to follow, okay? Okay, more things, always exciting, every year, more programs. Men and women, right? New programs that are coming online, it's very exciting. You've got the varsity programs here, Drury's here, they're here in the recruiting group, University of the Rio Grande? I'm probably saying it wrong.
I think it's Rio.
It's Rio, okay. So Corey's here, he's recruiting. They're an interesting program because they're like a mix of a community college and a four-year college, but they've got a men's and women's program coming on. But again, this is another slide that I continually update. So if you're talking to families, tell them, right? Like, look, even in just this 1 year, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 16 programs that are varsity, supported by the school. That's exciting for us, right? To be able, and back in my day, it was just club. That was all you had, yeah.
What, and if this is too much of a tangent, feel free to,
No.
we can ask it later, but why are so many schools at these like smaller levels adding? Is it for student enrollment? Like why do you see these opportunities happening?
Yeah.
I mean, we all think rugby's great, and so I think everyone should add it, but like where do you see the opportunities happening?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think it's for enrollment management. I think for a lot of these smaller schools, they're thinking, how do we expand our reach? How do we make a niche for ourselves? Maybe, they had a NAIA D3 football program that cost a ton of money, didn't bring anything to them. It's costing them more money than bringing in. And here comes rugby. It's a fairly cheap sport. I'm not saying that's the way they should go, but in terms of field equipment, it's a cheaper sport to bring on than football or lacrosse, where you have a lot more equipment, right? So what they're going to do is, I'm Newberry College. I'm bringing this on because now we get to reach a segment of the population. Why else would they get some girl from San Diego to come to Newberry College in South Carolina, right? Or why would anyone decide to go to Wheaton Jesuit from Maine, right? So they get to bring in some more diverse students and things like that. So it helps their enrollment, helps their diversity, and honestly, it's a money thing too, right? So they can offer, let's say I'm Drury, who's here, let's say they're interested in one of your players and they offer them a $20,000 scholarship. That's awesome. Let's say the cost to go to school there is $35,000. That family still pays $15,000 for that kid to go to school there. That would have never gone. You know what I mean? Like, that was $15,000 they weren't going to get anyway. So now they get it just by offering a discount. They're not giving any kids money. They're just discounting the cost. So they just get to increase their enrollment. Do I think it's a great practice? I think it depends. Some schools, I've seen it work. Other schools, not so much. So I think it depends on who they've hired to bring on. Like at Aquinas right now, for them to bring on Laura Miller and also Coach Lance from Davenport, who have already built brand new programs from scratch. They understand how to do it. I'm pretty confident that they'll be able to do something similar to Titus. So I think getting to see what the history of those coaches are like and seeing what they're going to build. Does that answer your question a little bit?
Is it a bigger risk to send our kids to these versus somewhere that's already established?
I think it depends. Like, so many of my answers are going to be it depends. I think anytime you have a brand new program, there's a little bit of a risk because you don't know what's going to happen. However, I think, for example, definitely for the NCAA ones, less of a risk because there's certainly protocols they have to follow, right? They can't cut corners because there's this overarching kind of group saying, like, this is the budget, these are the coaches, this is the athletic training. Like, it has to be comparable to what's called like a similar sport. So they have to have the same kind of support as they would in soccer. It would have to look the same. Some of these other ones, like for example, Christian Brothers has had successful club men's and women's for a long time before elevating. So I also don't think that's as big of a risk because they've already had rugby on campus for a long time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And the administration understands what they need and those sorts of things. Sometimes it's riskier if it's like completely brand new. They've never even seen rugby. It's all, just kind of starting from scratch. Wheeling, for example, has had a varsity men's program for a long time. So for them to add women's doesn't seem like that big of a risk. So, I don't know if that answers your question.
It does.
I would ask some of those questions too, though, like, what are your plans for the next 5 to 6 years with this program? So if they're starting in small college, if they're like, look, our goal, let's say we're talking about wheeling. If you're to talk to that head coach, they're like, look, our goal is in 3 years, we want to be NCAA. Okay. They're going to have certain markers they have to hit to be NCAA. So then you already know that they have a plan in place. But if they're like, I don't know, we just want to see what's going to happen with the team, that's a little more questionable. Yeah. Okay. Sometimes I talk a little bit, tell me if this is way too much information, but again, if you're definitely a high school coach, you're going to get these questions and you're going to get emails from coaches that talk about where they are in the spectrum about being a varsity program, a varsity club, or a club. Okay? So when I say and actually if you were in Laura's previous presentation, she probably talked about this, so you probably learned about this a little bit. But when I say a varsity program, what do you think about? Anyone?
Supported by the school.
Support by the school, yep. Anything else?
Scholarships.
Scholarships, yeah, typically. If there's going to be a school that can offer athletic scholarship, it's going to come from a varsity program. Right? So it's rare. You're going to get it from a club. If you do, it's going to be kind of outside of that club. The main thing that I talk to families about that I think is important for them to remember, typically if it's a varsity program supported by the school underneath the intercollegiate athletics department, the big thing that I think families don't think about sometimes is the medical piece. Okay, so we all play rugby. We did a long time ago. This is a contact collision sport, right? You're either going to get injured or you have been injured before and you know what that could mean, right? You're going to need, some folks, knock on wood, doesn't happen to you, but surgeries, you might have to be out, have PT, things like that. If you're in a varsity program, that's taken care of by the school versus on your own with your insurance, you're kind of scrambling to do all those things. I had a girl a few years ago, she went to an NCAA program. Before she even stepped foot on campus as a freshman, she broke her leg in a summer tournament. So even prior to enrolling, that team already coordinated her surgery, coordinated her PT, did everything for her so that she could get rehab and get back on that field, obviously healthy and all those things. But the family was shocked because they were like, she's not even a freshman yet. This is in the summer, it was in July, but they coordinated everything. And they're like, that was actually a really good feeling to know that they had that support behind this athlete. So think about that. Obviously, it's kind of a scale piece where varsity has a lot of support, varsity clubs kind of in between. So like a Penn State, University of Arizona, those are examples of kind of some pieces of varsity, some pieces of club as well. And then the vast majority of teams in the US are club. Okay, doesn't mean that they're worse, but for example, club rugby at St. Mary's College in California is pretty dang good, right? So they go up head-to-head with Cal Berkeley, which is kind of the gold standard of varsity men's rugby in the US, has been for a very long time, and they have beat them. So I think that's always a really good example of if you have the right people, the right organization, you're still going to play top-level rugby, even if it's not officially supported by the school. Yeah, question?
So I heard that for varsity clubs, while there may not be money available, there are the options like earmarked for admission. Is that true?
It can be. You're gonna hate me. It depends. So here, I'm gonna skip ahead. Okay. So what you're talking about is
That
here.
influence, yeah.
Yes. So if you're a varsity program, more than likely, because they have to build a team, they have admission influence, meaning admission says to them, well, you've got 5 spots. If they meet minimum requirements, we can essentially walk this file over, right? That's typically where a coach will ask for a profile, transcripts, official test scores. It'll do what's called a pre-read. you're kind of talking about a timeline. That usually is going to happen summer between junior and senior year. So let's pretend we've got a junior right now. If you're a junior, you would be turning in all that information to a college coach. They would walk over, they kind of rank their kids, or like, here's our file. Whether or not it's paper, I don't think it's paper anymore, but I like to think it's still a file, right? They walk over to admissions and they say, we need a pre-read on these 5. Admissions will go through, right, every sport, right? So we've got all of our football pre-reads, we've got all our rugby, we've got all our volleyball, whatever. Admissions goes back to those coaches and says, look, we're gonna give you 3 reads on this. It's either green or go ahead and recruit this player. We think she's gonna be great. They might give them kind of a yellow, maybe this student, we need to see a little better grades this first semester of senior year. We need more testing. We need more reference letters from their counselor that they're going to take tougher classes, something like that. So with caution, proceed with caution, right? The yellow or red. I know you like this player, but she's not going to get it, right? She doesn't meet our minimum standard for admission, so we're not going to help her. Now, a coach can advocate, right? So let's say that they give a red. We recommend the student look at other options, which is a real soft way of being like, probably a no, right? That coach can say, look, I know that this is where it is really helpful for, as a player, you get to know these coaches. Okay, that it's more than just, let me send in a resume, let me fill out a form, and that's it. You want them to understand your story, right? So the coach can say, look, I know that Susie doesn't look super strong. Her GPA is not at the level of what our typical student is, but let me tell you something. Her mom was fighting cancer that whole freshman year, right? She was taking care of her younger brother. She was in charge of X, Y, and Z, which is why her grades weren't that strong. But look, you can see as soon as her mother went into remission, her grades came back up. There was a lot of other stuff going on. Now, from an admission standpoint, then you can say, okay, that makes sense, right? Those C's were an anomaly. That was an outlier. The student is not normally a C student. She's actually more of an A-B student. Okay, so then we can make adjustments, right? So the more you can explain what's going on in your life and build a relationship with those college coaches, they can advocate for you better. Does that make sense? So that's an admission influence situation, right? So typically if you're a varsity program, you will have that. You'll have a limited number of spots that you can do that, okay? Well, typically also what will happen is if you have a club program, you may not have admission influence, but you'll have input, where you can flag an applicant. And you can say, for example, I'm Syracuse, I'm Coach Wilson, I've been there, I'm faculty at Syracuse. They know him, they like the program. What he's gonna do is he talks to players throughout the year. Someone says, look, by the way, I'm applying to Syracuse early, I wanna be in the film and television media department. He goes and takes your file to admissions and says, look, just give these kids an extra read. I'd like to flag these 5 guys or 5 girls because I think they'd be great on this campus. I'm already vouching for that. Think about it like, has anyone ever applied for a job and you know someone who works there, right? And that person's like, yeah, I know Susie, she's awesome. She'll be great here. It's that level. It's not a guarantee you get that job or you get that spot, but it's helpful to have someone already on campus kind of vouching for you, right? So I would look at it like typically an admission read is typically 2 reads on average, right? Me and you read a file, I might say yes, you might say no. That would then go to a committee, and the committee would then make a decision about it. If we both say yes, that student is normally admitted. If we both say no, that student's not admitted, right? What they're saying is if Coach Wilson says, can you give this person an extra read, they're going to committee no matter what. We're going to talk about this student because someone on campus has vouched for them. Now that happens with band. It happens with someone who's going to be an awesome addition to the journalism program, right? They're now looking at rugby as just another piece of the community, right? That this is a big part of the community. Does that answer your question? Okay. I'm just gonna. All right. Should we talk about money? College is expensive. How much do you guys think the average cost of going to college is right now? 68,000. Wow. Like total. Or do you mean a year?
Oh, no.
Total. What do you all think? Ladies, what do you think? Per year on average.
Like 25 to 30.
80,000 a year. Wow. Okay. A On average, it's around $20,000 to $25,000 per year, right, over 4 years. It's a really big investment, right? College is tip for families and students. It's usually your second biggest purchase you're going to make in your lifetime after a house, right? Who here has either recently or can remember when you've had to look for a house, purchase a house? Okay, what were you looking for in your house?
Enough space, just a good place to live, good location.
So location and space, what do you mean by space?
Just enough space for my stuff.
Yeah, so were you like, I need 3 bedrooms, I need,
Yeah,
right?
certain amount of bedrooms, bathrooms.
Yeah, what about you? What were some things you were looking for in a house?
Lighting,
Lighting?
yeah,
I like that, okay.
outside lighting.
Perfect. Okay, so when we talk about rugby scholarship, I get students all the time, families, parents. Hi, I'm so-and-so, where can my kid go and get a rugby scholarship? I'm like, okay. That's just me saying, where can I go buy a house, guys? Well, I don't know, I could buy a house right there. I could buy a house in Maine, right? I sent my sister and I was like, oh, I'm in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, right? And I'm like, look, we always talk about real estate, because I think I love like house hunters and stuff like that. I'm like, look, you can buy this like 7-bedroom house in Wisconsin for $299,000. They live in the Bay Area, right? Where my sister just, their 3-bedroom, 2-bath condo, $850,000, right? Insane. That's all. I would never come back to California. But the idea of where can I go and get a scholarship, it's such a big question. And as a student and then as a family, I'm like, well, what else? If you want to go to college and you want to do it for free, can I help make that happen? Absolutely. Are you willing to go to Mississippi? Are you willing to go to Iowa? Are you willing to go to Alabama? Are you willing to go to, wherever it is, right? If that's what you want, you cannot choose. If I want beachfront property with a yard for my dog on half an acre, it's not going to be in San Diego. You know what I mean? Like for $200,000. Like it's just not going to happen. Maybe someone could find that for me, but it's going to be in an area that I don't want. But that's not for me to choose, right? I've set my parameters. Whatever I get is what I get, right? So when you're talking to families, if that's the first thing they say, look, and I get this all the time, right? Like we got family of 5, this is the first one. We can't spend $60,000 on this kid. We got 4 more coming. So how do we make this affordable for our family? That is our priority. We want our kid to be able to go to school and thrive and play rugby and get a good education, but this is something that is a big piece of the puzzle. Cool, let's focus on that. Then you gotta have an open mind. You gotta be okay with University of Rio Grande, Drury, Newberry, colleges that you may not have heard of, maybe in areas you're not, you're like, I don't even know where that is. Look it up, right? You've got to be okay with that. So rugby scholarships are going to come in the form of just money you're getting for your rugby talent, right? So you're a junior, right? What's your name? Ava. Ava? Yeah. Ava, what position do you play?
Outside center.
Outside center, okay. So there's a college out there that's like, do we really need an outside center? Have you seen Ava? She has a step and then she passes and she runs an underline and she strikes through. She's awesome, right? Someone's going to look at Ava and say, look, we're willing to give X amount of money to you because of your position, because of the talent that you bring. We're not looking at anything else, right? That's rugby scholarship. So students always, parents are, oh, where can we get scholarship? Well, there's a very few, maybe less than 25 programs out there that can offer rugby scholarship. In a perfect world, if your family were to say, we want to pay the least amount, right, just for us to afford it, she's going to go to grad school at some point, so the undergrad is not as important for us right now. Now we're going to try to layer or stack scholarships. Do I have students that go to college for free, pretty much? Absolutely. But it is not based on the rugby scholarship. They're not going to Drury on a full ride rugby scholarship. They're going because we've stacked 2 scholarships together. Because they're a good enough student, they've got good test scores if they had it, good leadership, good, kind of overall profile, they're an artist, they're this or that. The school's willing to say, look, we've never had a student from Wisconsin come to our school. We're gonna give her $20,000, right? It's gonna look more like this, right? Because the student is such a good student and has all these other cool things, we're gonna stack these 2 scholarships together to bring that total cost of 40 down to 15. Or it could be more, right? So some students of mine who are able to stack this really well, I had a student 2 years ago at Bonnings or at Save Bonaventure, he paid $8,000 a year ago, total, right? Because he was a really very strong student, good rugby player, and they were able to stack everything together, okay? The process, because I want to make sure you understand, typically second semester of junior year is when these conversations begin with coaches. Okay, so if you want to start talking to coaches earlier when you're a freshman, you can. They're probably not going to do much, but it's okay. You want to start a conversation, okay? Second semester junior year into the summer is usually when things kind of start moving more. Offers don't usually happen until fall of your senior year, and then decisions are made usually around now, January, February of your senior year, and then you decide. Typically the deadline would be around May, but like I was talking to the coach in Barry and he's like, I don't have a deadline because they're still trying to build. So their deadline will be all the way till August. But I would definitely advise your families, if you're getting offers, make sure the offers are in paper. I mean, it's literally like buying a house, right, or buying a car. Someone's not like, yeah, here's your car. And you're like, well, where's the paperwork, right? We need it on paper. I would have them put it in an email. You need it from the admissions office, from financial aid. You need it in document, like what they're offering. Is it over 4 years? Is it just for the first year? If after the first year, is it renewable? Those are all questions to ask, right? What happens if I'm injured? Do I still keep the scholarship? Okay, so those are all really good questions to kind of have in your back pocket. Any questions about scholarship or recruitment? There's a ton, I'm sure, but I'm just trying to give you a brief overview. Okay, so junior year, one of the big things I would tell, and as a high school coach, something you can help them do. Oh, where did my bag go? Okay. If you don't already, I would say you can start this as a freshman. You can download this for free off my website, but I would have everyone do a rugby resume. Okay? So you can tell definitely by junior year, but they can start it earlier, and I would put it in a Google Doc where they can update it all the time. One of the first things they're going to do if they're starting the recruitment process is they're going to fill out either a recruitment form or they're going to contact a coach with a rugby resume. Okay? The rugby resume is helpful. It's one page with all your information, right? Your contact information, your coach's info, how many years you've been playing, what's your primary position, how tall are you, how much do you weigh, what other sports do you play? I had this last year with rugby players who have been recruited that haven't played rugby in like 2 years. Like they just haven't had rugby, right? But they were sending film of them playing volleyball, soccer, weightlifting, like anything they could do so that coaches would know, oh, I haven't seen you play rugby, but you're still a pretty good athlete. Right? I can still recruit you off of knowing that you can move your feet. You play basketball, you're pretty good, you've got good understanding of like space and passing and stuff, right? So that's one thing as a coach, and then as a student and helping your teammates, hey, we should all make sure we have a resume. Because if a coach is out there, like if you're gonna go to the combine tomorrow, well, I would have a resume with you. Like part of what I tell students all the time, the most successful recruits are the easy recruits. Make it easy for them. Coach Miller's up here, she's trying to build a program. This is not like, have you ever seen the movie The Blind Side? Right, you guys seen that movie? Like, no one's gonna come knocking on your door tomorrow and be like, oh, I saw you at that combine, I wanna offer you $60. Like, it's not football, right? It's not SEC football where they're flying around and watching games. It's usually one person, maybe an assistant coach. They're doing a ton of work to recruit on top of the day-to-day coaching, right? So it's usually not their favorite thing to do. You wanna make it easy for them. Here is one paper with all my info, all my test scores, links to my film. Here you go. They don't have to chase you for it. They've got it all right there. Let's sign that girl. Let's sign that guy because it's easy. They don't have to think about it. Right? The hard ones are the ones that they're having to chase, and sometimes they'll just move on past that. They're like, oh, I emailed them and they never responded. Second piece of advice for your students and also for the students in the room: check your emails. Do you check your emails regularly? Sort of, not really. I had a student, I was like, open your email. And it was like 1,146 unread emails. He's like, it just got out of control, like, I don't know, and now it's like so overwhelming. He's like, I just don't check it. All of college admissions and recruitment goes through your email, okay? So you have to get in the habit. With that one student, he actually just had to start a new email address that was just for college. So for his applications, everything went in that. He had to check it. It became like a job. Like, at first, we're like, every Sunday, check your email. And then sooner or later, it has to be every 2 days, every 3 days. But all of the coaching communication should go through email, CC with parents. I've had some players tell me they started getting messaging through like Instagram or something and offers and that sort of thing. Maybe it's happening, but it's not official, right? No varsity program is going to put an offer through Instagram that's going to stick, right? So think about what we just said about purchasing cars and houses and stuff, right? You wouldn't take an offer on a house through Instagram, right? It's going to be through formal methods. So encourage your students to check their email, get them in the practice of that, whether that is the way you communicate with your players now, it might be through an app, but even if it's just letting them know, like, this is the way you're going to communicate. Make sure your email address is not partyguysandbeer31@gmail, because that doesn't look great, right? So we want to make sure that it's pretty standard. Okay, any questions about this? Okay, so some basic stuff. Again, some things for the high school coaches to maybe, again, just ideas. You don't have to do these, but things you can do to help your athletes. I am always shocked how many students don't know what their transcript looks like or what their cumulative GPA is. I'm gonna put you all on the spot here. Do you all know what your cumulative GPA is? Good. You don't know what it, well, you're a freshman, so you may not. Do you know what a cumulative GPA is? What is it?
Basically, a number that you give that like averages your overall grades.
Yes, very good. Now, what we're looking for, so cumulative GPA, right, grades 9 through 12, really when you're applying it's 9 through 11. We're also only looking at your academic GPA. So we're stripping out things that colleges don't care about. They don't care about what you got in health. They don't care about what you got in PE. So if you have a 3.8 overall GPA, your academic GPA may be different. Certain schools also look at different GPAs. For example, if you're applying to University of California, they only look at grades 10 and 11. So you'll have an overall GPA, academic GPA, and a UC GPA. They're weird, so don't worry about them, but I'm just letting you know, depending on the schools, you'll see on your transcript which GPAs you have, and that's what you're gonna report, okay? As a high school program, I had a team in San Diego that did this. I thought it was a really great idea. If you have the manpower to do it, they had a parent volunteer for each team. They just had a binder, and they're like, at the end of each semester, they had students turn in a transcript. Two things it did. It had a student practice going into their school registrar, their high school counselor, and say, hey, you know, my team asks for this. Can I get a copy of my unofficial transcript? Okay, so they're going to need that to apply, and they're going to need that to send to a college coach, especially if they're getting recruited, especially if it's NCAA. They need a copy of that to verify what that GPA looks like, okay? Second, it makes the student accountable and invested in this process. It's not the parent, right? I tell parents all the time, if I'm in a meeting and the parent's talking and the student said nothing, I'm like, okay. The student needs to be the one driving this process, not the parent. If the student's not invested in this, save your money, right? Don't work with me, they need to be part of this process, right? So yeah, get them starting to do little things like, yeah, I don't know where to go to get my transcript. Okay, go find out. Go talk to your counselor. How do you get the transcript? They have to start being a part of this process, not have the parents do it for them, right? Okay. By the way, also it happens every year. Transcripts are entered, grades are entered by a human being. Human beings make mistakes. Every year I have students that have a wrong grade entered in. You don't catch it, that is what's going to a college. That's what's going to a coach. So you think you got an A in that class and you finally see a transcript and it says B, you need more time to fix it. You don't want to catch that too late. Right? So every semester, get a copy of your transcript. That's what I have my students do. Okay? Any questions about that? Okay. How am I doing? You guys doing okay? Hanging in there? Okay. Obviously, the better your grades are, harder your curriculum, all of that in a balance, the more merit scholarship you're gonna get. Okay, so I had students go on for a full academic ride, absolutely. I had a student 2-3 years ago, they got an offer to go to, well, they got accepted to University of Notre Dame. They're super excited about that, that was their dream school, no money. Right, it was like $65,000 a year, crazy like that. He also got into Texas Christian, also good school, full academic ride. And then he was torn, right? The family's like, what do we do? What do we do? I'm like, this is, you all have to decide. Well, he knew he wanted to go to medical school. That was his goal at the time. He did take the TCU offer to save the money to maybe go to medical school wherever, right? So those are all things to think about is technically, if you look at the rankings and all that stuff, TCU would be like ranked lower than University of Notre Dame, but is he getting a free education for 4 years? He's saving quite a bit of money, right? So perfect. So there's some test scores. I'm gonna skip that for now. Some things for you to help your players with. We talked about the rugby resume. Talked about a little bit about kind of the process, right? So one of those things is kind of the proper communication, right? So like I mentioned, I would say on average, second semester junior year, which is right now, if you're a junior, right, class of 2023, this is when you would start that communication. Okay, so I think about recruiting like, what's the word? It's a long game. Okay, it's talking about true recruitment where someone's gonna offer you money, someone is going to offer you an admission spot, above someone else. It's a little bit like dating and you're looking to get married, okay? You need a college to fall in love with you, ask you to marry them, right? Now, does that happen off of just, I fill out one form and they're like, yes, you're it, right? That rarely happens, just like in real life, right? You don't just fill out a form, you meet the person you're interviewing with. You need to get to know them. You need to get to know the coach needs time to get to know you. So usually that process would start now, and again, like I said, it's a lot of back and forth. You were to fill out a form today for Davenport, they're gonna email you back and say, oh, this is great. Would you like to schedule a call? Yeah, I'd love to schedule a call. And you have a conversation. A couple months later, hey, by the way, I'm going to this national tournament. This is the jersey I'll be wearing, Hope you'll be there, right? You're constantly having a conversation. So by the time it's time for them to make decisions, they'd much rather recruit the student that A, was easy, they already got all the stuff, and second, they built a relationship with you. They've gotten to know you. They're like, oh, I know that one student. Ava likes it. What else do you do besides rugby? What do you like to do? Art and writing. So they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna know Ava. She likes to write. She does this. Okay, yeah. She's gonna be a great fit for the team versus someone who just filled out a form and that was it. And 90% of the students I talk to fill out a form. They're like, awesome. They'll come get me. I'm just that great of a rugby athlete. But there's got to be more work behind it, right? So if you're getting married to some program, which means you've got to get to know them, you've got to give them time to get to know you, okay? I know in some of the other sessions we talked a lot about film. It's going to vary from different coaches what they want. If you have a high school team, film is, if you're able to get film, it will help all of your players out. Do you all film right now? Yeah? No. How do you film? Do you have like a parent? How does that work?
I'm a student manager.
Oh, nice.
It's not the best, it's like shaky, tripod, grainy, but it's something.
Right. And that's what I thought. Some families are like, oh my gosh, we need to like go hire this and get like drones. And I'm like, no. Just something, anything. Even if it's like your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, on a cell phone, something so they can see what you look like. Because it's great to have like on paper, right? This is like looking at a menu, right? Do I want to order? What's here, right? Like I want to see it, but it's different of seeing something like a pasta with a green dish and then like seeing in front of you, right? So you have the resume to get them interested, but I still need to see you, hopefully live or on film. If possible, full games are better. Okay, highlight films are great. I think a lot of students love highlights. I think they're fun. If you get recruited off a highlight, I don't know. I'd rather see a highlight and then be able to see the game that highlight came from. Usually highlights tend to be scoring, scoring, scoring. But what if you're in luck? You don't really score very much, but you do a lot of hard work. I want to see that hard work, right? Or you're a winger that for whatever reason, your game plan doesn't get it out to the wing a lot. I need to see what else you're doing. Maybe you're just really good at adjusting. You know, we see that, oh, there's a turnover and your game awareness is really good. Maybe you didn't touch the ball that much. That's still good, but we're still looking for those things. Let's see. Camps, tournaments, they're coming back. We'll see. I mean, tournaments are coming back, right? Like the nationals and stuff. Camps are still so, I mean, the ones that I've seen and I have on my website, I have a link for, I update it all the time with what camps are coming back. Most camps that I'm seeing are still kind of COVID cautious, so day camps, limited contact. So do I think you're really getting recruited off the camp? Probably not. It's like you've already been in contact. The camp is just another kind of, you know, extra piece, so they get to meet you in person and see how you fit. But you're hopefully already in touch with them before that. Any questions about any of these things? All ready? Okay. Just some resources. I have a couple. It literally just came in the other day. I have a guidebook. It's available online, or I have a couple with me this weekend. So this is the newest guidebook. It walks you through the whole process. I have all the lists of all the programs that are varsity with scholarship, varsity without. Those sorts. It's a really good kind of place to start if you're just starting off in the process. So they're $20. I've got like 4 left here. Or you can buy them online. So that's where they're available. These are some other kind of guides that I really love for you to take a look at. And I didn't really touch on testing too much because testing is optional right now. What I've seen from the college admissions world is if you test ACT or SAT, right, and you do well, it's going to help you. It's an extra data point from an admission standpoint they like. It helps them make decisions easier and quicker for them. If you take the test and you don't do well, just don't send it in. But it's the difference of saying you're going to do, let's say you do the combine tomorrow, right? No one's recruiting you just off of like your vertical. But having a vertical, having a Bronco, having those extra data points just gives a clearer picture of what kind of athlete you are, right? Testing from a college standpoint gives them another data point to refer back to. Okay, she got a B in math, but in her math SAT, she got a 790. She's probably a really hard math teacher, right? So you can kind of start understanding the context of grades if you have some objective test scores, okay? So if you're going to go into testing, make sure you prep. Okay, so those are two of the free options. There's lots of other options out there, but if you're going to go into testing, I wouldn't do it with no prep. Okay, so as a coach, if people ever ask you, I don't know if anyone's ever asked you for this, junior year is the year that they would do SAT or ACT. Usually it's offered at their high school for free. So I would encourage them, hey, are you guys going to take that test? You should, it will only help. It's not going to hurt them to take it. And then I always offer a free 30-minute consultation. So if you're going to have families that question and you're like, this is way outside my wheelhouse, I met someone I think could talk to you. You can always send them my info. So with that in mind, we've got 9 minutes. So any last questions for me? About college, about recruiting, yeah.
Karen, are you finding that players sort of focus on one or two schools, or are they spreading out their options?
Good question. I would say most of the students that I see that I work with will have dual lists. So what I mean by that is they'll have one list with maybe 2 to 3 that are rugby heavy, varsity that they're like, I don't have as much control over this. It's does Furman want to recruit me? Does AIC want to recruit me? Like I like those 2 schools. Those might be the ones that they're going through that dating kind of model with, right? And then their second list is going to be non-rugby heavy. Just if I can get in, I think it's going to be a good fit for me. I'm going to apply to University of Michigan. I'm going to apply to UConn. I'm going to apply to Rutgers. I like the school. They have the engineering program I like. I'll play decent club rugby. And then they'll kind of follow those 2 and see what happens. So I really stress having a pretty diverse list. And on average, let me ask you, how many schools do you think students are applying to right now, on average?
6 or 7.
12 to 15, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, so in my day, long time ago, okay, I applied in 1997. I applied to 2 colleges, 2, because I had to handwrite my essay. So I was like, yeah, you're nodding your heads, right? Like, I was not gonna write a 600-word essay more than 2 times by hand, right? Like printed so they could read it and put it in a FedEx envelope and like make sure it gets sent. That was the old way of doing it. Students now, it's all online, right? You go through the Common App, you go through Coalition, you do all these different things. It's a lot easier for students to go, I don't really know, I'll apply to more, that one, that one, that one, that one, that one. So that's when more students apply to 12 to 15 versus in the past it was like 2 to 4. It was pretty small. I would recommend 8 to 10, right? If you're going over 10, you haven't done a lot of research. You're back to the, I'll buy a house. Any house out there. I'm just gonna look at that one and that one and that one and that one. You've not figured out what the criteria is. Who do you want to marry? Right? You're like, I'll marry anybody. You know, whatever. As long as you're over 5'3", you know, like you have no criteria. You've got to make sure you know what you're looking for. And every single one of those colleges you should be happy with. So the likely schools, the ones you're going to get into, they're going to love you. Those are going to be the ones giving you money. You should love to go there. Possible schools, 50-50, you make it, you might not, depends on the year. You should love that school. And you got the 1 to 2 reaches, right? Less than 25% chance you're going to get in. You should also like them too. You should be happy with all of them. So the goal with this, with your families, with yourselves, you want to get to spring of your senior year and have options. You want to be able to say, this is really hard. I have 4 to 5 really great options. How do I choose? Not, I guess I have to go there. That's the only one. I didn't even explore other ones. Okay? Yeah. All right. With that, I will put up my information. You can always reach out to me. I am also hosting a webinar on February 1st. The info is on my website under events calendar. These are women's coaches, the ambassador globally in Claremont colleges. And then usually every month I do a different webinar with different coaches or just different things to kind of encourage students to look at maybe programs that are not as highlighted. And thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. And I'll be around all day tomorrow at the Combine as well, and the rest of the day. So if you have questions, come on. Thank you.